Hello and welcome to episode 74 of The Great and Crowbar. It is the 6th of January 2015. My name is Chris Thurston and today I'm joined by Graham Smith.
Hello.
Marsh Davies.
Hi.
Tom Francis.
Hello.
And Tom Senior.
Hello.
All five of us to celebrate the new year and having had a break and all being here in the same room for the first time since the last podcast, actually.
Were you not here at the New Year celebration that we had?
He wasn't.
There, actually.
Oh, God.
Oh,
That was New
yeah.
Year's Graham. Man, I just must have hallucinated.
Yeah.
Having drunk a large amount of gin.
And having established the most forgettable members of our friendship.
Yeah.
We'll move on. What have people been playing over their break? We've all had a couple of weeks off, which is rare, to play video games, which isn't.
Just before the break, I tried Invisible Ink, because it was on my list of things that I ought to play that were in the IGF, and I played a lot of stuff that I quite liked, and I kind of expected to, not really click with Invisible Ink. I played it, at a show once, and I think I might have tried a very early version, and both times it was so brutally hard, I just got wiped out. And then unfortunately, it turned out to be fucking brilliant. And even worse, it turned out to run well on my laptop. And so Christmas was ruined. Because then I had something I could take with me that was really, really good. I actually didn't play a huge amount when I was actually with my family, but, I played for 2 or 3 days straight before going home. And so it's basically stealth XCOM. So the same kind of isometric perspective. I think it is actually sprite-based rather than true 3D. But similar thing where you have a globe and you send your agents to a particular mission. One of the main differences is you only have 2 agents, and that's it. And if you lose one of your agents, that's well, fuck. This is gonna be hard now. It is, on very rare occasions, it's possible to rescue another agent and get up to 3. But in the normal campaign mode, it's quite a weird idea, because it's much more like a roguelike than XCOM is, in that, XCOM has a permadeath mode, but you've got hundreds of people and you can buy more people, and so actually running out of them is would take a long time. This is sort of designed for not short playthroughs exactly, but a small number of missions. I have completed it now, and it was only about 8 missions, I think, that I played. But before I did that, I played lots and lots of runs where I would do 4 or 5 missions and then die on the final one. And because you have so few agents, dying in the mission is pretty much dying in real life. In the meta game. Right. It's the end of your campaign. The story, it has a story. This is another weird thing about its kind of roguelikiness, is that there's a setup for it, which is you're this agency. It's kind of, I guess it's near future. I immediately identify with it because it's so gun-pointy in so many ways. It's breaking into offices. It's one of the main characters is just a guy in a trench coat and a hat and looks just basically the same archetype that Conway is also lifting off. And it's also set in a kind of mostly relatable, realistic present-day stuff, but just the technology is a little bit better. They're just more cool gadgets and stuff. The story is that your agency is dying, you're about to be destroyed by something, all the corporations are coming after you, and you've only got 72 hours before your whole agency will be wiped out. And so you have to do as many missions as you can in that 72 hours, in order to build up your team, basically, and make yourself as good as possible for the final mission, which will be in 72 hours when I think they're supposed to come for you or something. It's in early access, so that final mission isn't in there yet, so there's kind of a placeholder climactic mission, which you really just play a tough mission. But they say, in the final game, there'll be kind of a selection of different final missions. But that's weird because it kind of takes away, I really love the setting, it's really exciting, and the style of all the characters is really cool. Other than the Conway-looking guy, there's International, who's a lady hacker who wears these big dorky headphones, and she looks really cool. And then there's a whole bunch of other characters, all kind of they don't look like sexy, attractive people. They look like weirdos and mean assholes. And that appeals to me for some reason. But then they kind of it sort of makes it a bit depressing that your whole agency is going to be over in 72 hours no matter what you do. And it's just, are you going to die soon, or are you going to get a bit stronger and then hopefully complete one last mission? But it's pretty fucking tricky to make it through 72 hours. 72 hours is the missions themselves effectively take no time. but you have to fly out to them, and so it's literally the flight time crossing the globe to get to the location of the missions. And you have a selection of usually 4 to 6 missions dotted all around the globe, and wherever you go, when you choose your next mission, that will obviously determine which other missions are close to you. So it's not like you stay at a base of operations, you actually just fly out to each mission and then fly straight from that one to the next one. So you can kind of semi-strategically plan your route if you want to get loads of missions in before the end. But that also has a weird thing because you kind of early on you just kind of want to complete a run, right? Like in Spelunky, you want to get through all 16 levels and you've won it, and you're still going to play it again, but you kind of want to get to that point. And in Invisible Ink, really, to win it, you just want the end of the game to come. You want the 72 hours to expire, so you take the longest flights. So you just want, you only want to do a couple of missions before you're fucked, rather than having to do 8 missions before you're fucked. But, I mean, once you've completed it, that doesn't really factor into it. And you do unlock an endless mode where you can just play it again and again. But anyway, the thing that's really great about it is the actual missions themselves, which are, like I say, XCOM style, turn-based. You have a certain number of action points, you move, but you don't have guns to start off with, and you just have tasers. And your tasers take 3 turns to recharge every time you use them. And the people you knock them out with wake up in 3 turns. So it's play XCOM with that. Melee only, people get up, and your things have a cooldown timer. But that means it's all about not getting spotted at all. If you get seen, the whole game stops basically, and it's like an emergency situation, and you'll probably use that agent. But if you're in an okay position, there's a way. If your other agent's right behind the guy who's about to shoot your first agent, you can tase him. If you're right in a doorway, you can just close the door, which is great. And sometimes you can rush to cover. If you're right 1 square away from a location that the enemy can't see, even if he turns, then you can get out of it. But you can't just move 1 square out of his vision cone because he can just turn. But yeah, it kind of gives you that one last chance. So if you do get spotted, you don't actually get shot right away. You have that chance to get out of it. And lots of it is weird like that. Almost everything about it is just a little bit different to how things normally work. There are guns, but instead of having ammo, you find charge packs, and charge packs can, refill any gun, but they can also, refresh the cooldown on any item, including your tasers. And you have augmentations that, because you have no base, you have to, if you want an augmentation installed, you have to, or rather if you want, if you want to get augmentations, basically, you have to take a mission that's actually set in an augmentation lab. And go and find the machines, and then they'll have a free org in there, or you can upgrade the number of orgs you can install by installing a new slot, and that knocks you out for 2 turns. And again, you've only got 2 agents, so one of your agents is now unconscious for 2 turns. So it just leads to loads of all of its systems are really well interconnected, so the orgs give you abilities that become relevant to both the hacking game and the hiding from people game. And there's, if you want to buy something, you have to do a mission that's got a shop in it so that you can buy it from there, because again, there's no home base to really buy things from. And I had a great moment where I was in a situation where I thought it was completely fucked, because I sent my Conway-looking guy to, there was this guard who has a 3-layer shield, and that means every layer of armor or shields means you need 1 point in penetration to get through it. So tasers have 0 penetration, guns usually have 1 or sometimes 0. You could get an armor-piercing gun that has 2, and then you could have an org installed in your brain that helps you penetrate things better, and that would get you 3. So it's theoretically possible you could have a weapon that could take that down, but in practice, I had literally nothing that could penetrate anything at all. But because it's a shield, it's electronic, and you have a hacking mode that you can go into where any electronics you know about, you can hack them using a variety of different tools, and it's kind of you get to choose at the start which hacking tool you want, and there's one that just takes away one, their layers of protection are called firewalls, and it takes away 1 firewall for 2 points, 2 points of your power. But that's quite expensive, so I went for one that is called the Parasite, where it only ever costs you 1 point of power, but it only eats through 1 firewall per turn, so you kind of install a Parasite on it, and then you have to wait a couple of turns for it to actually get through it. And I've done that to this this 3 shielded guy. Like, I didn't need to go through that area early on, so I parasited him, and then I left him there, and he's walking around with his 3 shields, and I'm just like, haha, I only spent 1 power on you, and it's going to eat through all your fucking shields, and then we're going to tase you. And I did that. Then I had my Deckard, the Conway guy. They're going to get really annoyed at me calling him the Conway guy. I believe Conway's the original guy in the trench coat. I think every trench coat guy is copied from that. I had him run out to tase this guy. Guy's facing the wall, so it's perfect. Gets behind him, and the taser icon just doesn't light up. And I hover over the guy, and he's still got 1 layer of armor, like it's regenerated in the time that it took him to get over to the dude. And so he's just totally fucked, because now, next turn, the guy's going to turn around. Conway's used Deckard has used all of his points to get out behind the guy, so now he's standing directly behind him, like literally adjacent. There's nowhere else for the guy to turn except to look around and see him, at which point he'll shoot him, and we'll get like a chance to recover, but there's nothing he can do because he can't tase the guy, particularly when he's not being seen. And the other agent's way across the other side of the map. And I'm just thinking, fuck this, like, I don't think there's any way out of this. And then I remembered that my other agent had been to, the reason we were doing this mission was that it had a hacking shop, so you can buy upgrades for your hacking systems, from a cat. There's like a weird cat in the shop that you buy all your wares from. And she'd been to that terminal, and there was nothing there's nothing that good on there that we could afford. It was basically broke, and the only good stuff it has was super expensive. So I'd left it, and she was across the other side of the map. But if I made a run, which isn't stealthy and everyone will hear her, she could get back there. And I remembered when I was there, I saw I could buy the default hacking tool. You know, I said I went for the cheap parasite thing. The normal one that you would have just takes away 1 firewall for 2 points right away. And that's exactly what we have. We have 1 firewall I need to get rid of, and I need to get rid of it now. I can't wait for it. And so she had to sprint all the way back to the shop and then sell one of my current hacking things that was way better and buy the cheap shitty one just so we can break this 1 firewall, just so that then his shield goes down and then Deckard can tase him. It's like, fucking hell.
This sounds like the most Tom Francis game ever created.
It does feel like that.
Deus XCOM.
Yeah, it's amazingly compulsive because everything feeds into everything else. So that mission, obviously I survived it. I got to keep my agent, which is great. But also, it was kind of like a skin of my teeth win because I spent so much money and I lost one of my good hacking upgrades to do it. And there's such a huge range of success you could possibly have on a mission, from like, you know, losing one of your agents and only just getting out alive and spending all your money and using up all your equipment, to raiding every safe on the level and getting all of the money and finding a great shop and buying some cool guns and kitting out both your agents just to be amazing. And the missions don't have objectives. You're just there to like raid the place, basically. Just steal as much as you can, use any shops to buy cool stuff, and then just leave again. And it's up to you when to leave. You can just, if you want to, as soon as you find the exit, you can just walk out without taking anything. But because the purpose of the mission is to build up your team and make them better, obviously that wouldn't be very profitable. So yeah, everything is just kind of in a constant, everything's so connected that it makes you care about everything really, really deeply. Like, just doing this one room a bit better will affect, you know, what I can buy in the next mission, which then makes me more powerful, which means I can take on a different mission the one after, which might mean I can go to the augmentation chamber and get my guy upgraded, which means I can install his org I've had for ages. And I love that stuff.
I don't quite understand the 72-hour limit thing. Like, what, this doesn't sound like a good thing.
No, like I say, it puts me off a bit. Like, not so much because I, you know, want to keep playing when I've done that many missions, but just because it makes me feel a bit depressed. I just feel like, oh, the agency's fucked. Whereas, because I love the fiction so much and I love the aesthetic, I want to be like, I'm founding a new agency and we're going to build it up from the ground and it's going to be glorious and we're going to be this international spy network and it'll be awesome. There is, once you complete it, you unlock an endless mode. I haven't tried that yet. My suspicion is that it probably gets crazy hard really quickly because the game itself, I mean, it's hard to begin with. I think they've done a lot to make it easier since I last played it. And I think, Graham, when you played it, didn't you? Yeah. I remember you saying that there was, because you don't know where the exit is when you start, if it's not near you, then you just have a super tough mission because, you know, you've got to survive that much longer before you even know how to get out if you want to.
Yeah, I think I was playing it the week before it got added into early access, and I never got past the second mission.
So now they have a lot of devices around the level that will reveal things about the map. So one of them just reveals the whole map. One of them reveals all the cameras on the map. One of them reveals all the safes on the map. One of them reveals all the consoles on the map.
Well,
So if you find any of those and you hack them, then you'll have an idea of the layout at least, so you'll know where you have and haven't been and can see where the exit's likely to be. So that's a lot easier. But the thing I don't think they've changed that much is that it gets so much harder so fast. And I think that's the off-putting thing about it. Like, that's what I'd like to see them fix if they want to get new players in, because it was annoying at first to be like, I had the best first mission I could possibly have. Like, it just, mostly through luck and through having a little bit of knowledge from having played it before, I had just a really great, tense, close mission. And then the next one was just utterly impossible, just way outside my skill level. I just couldn't possibly hope to have completed it. And so I basically had a kind of bad experience on my first run, even though, like, it went so well on the first mission. And I think they just need to give you, like, maybe just a practice mode where you just play that difficulty 1 mission again and again, and it's randomized each time, or an even easier one just to ensure you get through it, get through one good mission.
I quite like the 72-hour time limit, though, for this stuff, because otherwise, every mission has a difficulty rating, and then, I don't know what the other stat is, but it's a type of mission, and you're going to get different rewards for doing it. If you didn't have that time limit, you could just do lots of easy missions until you ground out the perks in order to be able to do it better.
The easy ones seem to evaporate. In fact, it's kind of, so that thing about planning out your route, I was hearing that on a video of someone else playing it, and they're playing a much earlier version than me. And when I went back to it, I thought, actually, I can't plan out my route, because when I do a mission, when I come back to the globe map, everything's changed. Like, all the missions are totally different. At first, you have choice of difficulty 1 missions, and maybe there's 1 or 2 difficulty 2 ones. And when you next go back to the map, there'll be no difficulty 1 missions. It'll all be difficulty 2, some will be difficulty 3 or 4, and they seem to be in different places as well. But yeah, it's like, I would like to be able to grind the difficulty 1 missions, but I can't.
Graham, what have you been playing?
I've been playing Elite Dangerous.
So have I.
That's what I played over Christmas. I mainlined it for like 4 days straight. Played it entire days and then took a break for a day or two until my Cytec X52 Pro flight stick arrived.
Yeah.
And then I went back to playing it for another couple of more days. And although I've played it a lot, and it's certainly compelling, I'm not sure I actually enjoy it very much.
I think everyone I've spoken to who likes that game to the extent that they'll play it a lot has had that experience. And I've gone through the other side of it now, I think, and I like it again. But
Okay.
I'd like to hear what that feels like for you.
I don't mind games where it's difficult to get into them. Like, I played DayZ, for example, for 6 hours before I think I had even a single moment of fun with it. And those 6 hours were just running around an island, finding unresponsive, lagged out players, and stuff like that. Just trying to find where is the game in this thing, where are these incredible anecdotes. And Elite feels, when you very first start it, much the same. Like, I felt for a long time like I decided I wanted to be a trader. I was going to play it like Euro Truck Simulator. I was just going to trade things. But most of the space stations I would visit wouldn't have missions that I could take. Sometimes no missions at all. Sometimes nothing but unobtainable missions. And then if they did have missions I could take, they would be just 1 or 2, and only one of them was suitable to my life as a trader. The other one would be piracy or killing people or something like that, which I had decided, no, this is a game about forging your own path in space. I'm going to be the trader guy. So I would take these trading missions, and it's very slim rewards in that early game. And I after flying around for so long and finally finding where the game was, the game then became essentially just a treadmill, it felt to me, of doing these missions to grind out enough credits in order to be able to buy a hauler. I think it's the first step up for the trader ship, which I think is like 60,000 credits.
58,000, yeah.
58,000, okay. Whereas you start off with 1,000, and that took a good old time. Like, that wasn't a quick process to get that ship. And I think to start off with, it doubles your cargo size from like 4 in the Sidewinder to 8, and you can upgrade those to higher ones with better modules and stuff like that for another, I think, 12,000 credits or something like that if you've got that left over. But then the next step up for the next trading ship, I think, is 6 million credits or thereabouts.
Unless you go for a Cobra, whether you go to like an interstitial thing, which is actually more of a multi-purpose ship. Anyway,
Yeah.
there is.
But if I want to specialise in then I want the fantasy of I'm driving my
If you want a truck.
my space truck.
if you want a truck, then there's
I'm driving my space truck. And that's such an insane exponential increase that I can't imagine myself wanting to commit the time to doing it.
It's
And
100 times as much.
And it would be alright if there were more individual activities along the way that I enjoyed. So like I enjoy driving games. I've talked before about both City Car Driving and Euro Truck Simulator 2 on the podcast. But in both of those, you're making moment-to-moment decisions which are physically satisfying. You're overtaking, you're cornering. There's nice scenery. In Elite, most of the time, you're in faster than light travel, traveling between galaxies, just doing jump after jump after jump. Well, while you're doing the faster than light travel, there's just star fields going past and you're just waiting. And then if you're then turning around to point at the next destination and pressing a button and wrapping up and going, that's not much to it. The only kind of physical interaction you have is really either when you're interdicted or interdicted. I don't think we ever settled how that was.
Interdict.
Interdict. In which case, it's just, I think I've been interdicted 30 times, and if I fail the little mini game thing and I get pulled out, it's normally either it's just trivial. It's either trivial to kill them and destroy them because they're just an NPC and they're quite weak or something like that, or it's really trivial to just jet away, ramp up my faster than light drive again and jump back into hypershift and leave them behind, in which case, well, that was just a slight annoyance that wasted my time. If I succeed at the little mini game, then it's so abstract that I just feel like I'm keeping my mouse pointer within a moving cursor, which isn't that satisfying. But then also I've just had so many bugs with that. Like I've had it where I've completed the little mini game and it just hasn't ended. And I've just been stuck.
I've never seen that.
And I've had that like 3 or 4 times. I've been pulled out of faster than light and just there been nothing there. Which I don't know if that's like a thing that I'm doing where I've dropped out of warp in a different place or something like that.
That's the start of a Star Trek episode, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If my faster than light drives at that point didn't work anymore, then
That's an episode that takes entirely in within the show.
yeah. And then the physical interaction, which I do really enjoy, is docking. Like, I really enjoy the process of flying through a small letterbox and parking, space parking. This is what this game is. I like the space parking. But there's not really much else going on in that game, and not much else that I found that hooked me. I tried mining, so I sold my what's it called? Is it like a Zorg?
Zorgan Peterson Hall.
Yeah, I love that name. Zorgan Peterson Hall. I sold that and I bought another ship. What's the kind of fast, nimble combat one? Is it the Eagle, the first
Eagle,
combat step up?
the cheap one, like,
yeah,
like
really
40
cheap.
is an Eagle, yeah.
Yeah, so I got the Eagle and I decided to try and do some combat stuff, but at the early stages when you're just fighting kind of low level pilots, it does just feel like you're circling around them, lasering them. I haven't really had any experiences which felt tense or exciting doing that. Sometimes, even when doing missions even when trying to, like, I got an interdict drive of my own and, like, pulled people out of warp and stuff like that and scanning them with my bounty thing, but none of that felt particularly satisfying, and often the fights that then broke out were just sort of brief, or they just flew away from me and were faster than I was or something like that. And I haven't found, like, a thing to grip onto that's been really satisfying yet. I tried mining, like, I kitted myself out with a mining laser, and that was really tedious.
Mining is always tedious.
Yeah, but we've talked about this before, about, the value of boredom and tedium in game, and I did a lot of mining in Worm Online, and that was just right-click context-sensitive menus, but there was still some feeling of progress there.
There's more of a structure, right, in Worm, whereas they haven't implemented that stuff in...
Not to the same extent.
A lot is the information that they don't give you, so like, I'm sure there's a module that allows you to better scan asteroids and work out what materials they contain, but I'm just lasering them with my mining laser. A bit breaks off, and then I scanned a bit, and it's like, that's worthless. It's not really worth me taking that thing. And if I take that thing and I put it in my refining minerals bay or whatever, then if I then find something of value, I'm just going to have to throw that thing away unless I find enough of it to fill up my refining bay, in which case it becomes 1 unit of cargo and my refining thing becomes free again. In which case it's just kind of, I feel like I'm playing with a random number generator by kind of laboriously lasering this thing. Oh, my laser shit, by the way, so I laser the thing, nothing breaks off, okay? Wait for my laser to recharge a little bit, laser the thing, okay, bit breaks off. Scan it. Oh, okay, that's something decent. Now play the cargo scoop game while trying to avoid the asteroid. And that's kind of an interesting challenge, but after like an hour and a half...
Mildest praise.
after like an hour and a half of this, I just thought, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this is, I've got 1 piece of silver now. If I go sell this at the nearest station, I will get 200 credits. I need 6 million credits before, and I think if I get to those points with those ships, then there is probably an interesting game to latch onto in terms of combat and PvP and stuff like that. But I don't feel like at this stage with the crappy ships and the crappy tools that I can engage or even find those things.
Can I offer some counterpoints to that stuff?
Yeah.
Because I've done high level PvP in an Eagle.
Okay.
Like, so there's a huge difference between an Eagle that someone has spent 40,000 credits to buy and an Eagle that someone has spent 500,000 credits kitting out. And I kind of agree there's a weird gap. For combat, there are like interstitial ships. Like I'm in the Viper at the moment, which costs 150,000 credits, but I've spent 700,000 credits on that Viper. So it's approaching the kind of the tier above it. But like, the thing that I like about Elite that I don't think it communicates very well is that actually your upgrades can substantially change how your ship feels and what you're capable of. What it doesn't really do is tell you what you're capable of at a given time. So if you're not making very much money from if missions aren't available, you're not making much money from trading, there are rare goods. If you upgrade your hauler to have a really good jump range, you can make 600,000 credits in an hour. If you find the routes, but that involves, at the moment, some extra game stuff, so Google, that kind of thing.
Yeah, which I've been messing around with. So I've been hopping around on different subreddits, the general Elite one, but then there's also specific ones for Elite traders. And then a bunch of people have tried to design websites where people can submit market information.
Yeah.
And so, but it's dependent on players inputting that, because there's no kind of API for getting that information out of the game. And the in-game stuff doesn't at all give you the information you need in order to be able to work that out. Like the commodities
Not
market.
entirely in-game, no. There are some principles, like certain types of stations will always buy things from other types of stations.
Yeah, and trying to find those stations side by side in 2 systems so it's only 1 jump and that sort of stuff. I've read all about that.
So like, I've spent a lot of time in that game doing what you say, which is pulling people out of Super Cruise, interdicting people, pulling them out, scanning for bounties and hunting them, and I love that. Like, I'm still doing it. Like, I just, today, I re-kitted out my Viper, so it plays completely differently now. I changed what all my hard points do, and I changed my combat style completely. And I think so the thing I was going to say is, I think the point people reach with Elite where they're like, I don't know why the fuck I'm playing this, and I got to that. It's the point when docking becomes second nature. I think you can really pin it down. It's the point when that act of docking stops being like the sort of legendary Elite thing of like, this is the hardest thing anyone's ever had to do in a game. And when you just do it, and you've completely forgotten how hard it was when you started, and how kind of like those first few cargo runs when you have all of your money in your cargo hold and you do not want to smack into the side of the station because you're afraid you'll lose all your money. When you lose that fear because you're just like, yep, zoop, pop, right? Because it's become trivially easy. That's probably when you start to get because you lose that friction with the game. Like the one challenging thing that unifies all of the different.
Yeah.
Trading doesn't have a challenging physical task in it other than that. And I guess if you get like a Lakon Type 9, like this massive fucking space boat, then suddenly docking becomes hard again because your ship is as big as the slot.
I think I was looking at the modules and I saw that there was a module you can get for auto docking.
Yeah.
And I think I could afford it at that point. But it was like, if I buy this...
This is the only fun I have!
This is the only thing that I'm doing in this game. There is no other game here.
And that, to be fair, I think that's one thing. I think trading needs expanding a little bit to give it some sort of in-game, sort of like, more like, there's a few areas I think Bounty Hunting could do this well, like where it'd be really interesting to see them expand the existing game systems to make more of a play of information, like reading what's going on in the system and figuring out the trade routes for yourself rather than sort of consulting extra game information.
Yeah.
Tracking ships that way using for bounties would be good as well.
They've built such an immersive, wonderful sounding and feeling interface. And then I spend half my time alt-tabbing over to my second screen to look at Reddit. And that seems like a really deep failure, especially like, what I want to be doing is, I don't know if any of you have watched any of the development blogs for Limit Theory. It's the in progress space game being made by just one person, but it's very similar to Elite, but his trading system is just like thousands of graphs. So you can get everything is graphed. And so you can stare
Wow,
at
that sounds great.
That's I want the fantasy of being dull space trucker man. I just want the game to give me more of that I can get my hooks into, and it can get
You can watch the graph of the price of like whatever, like titanium or whatever, going up and down like by the second. It's updated every second, so you actually see it in real time scanning past, and you see the peak, and that would have been the time to sell.
I was going to say, like, so the way admittedly, my interest in the game is chiefly combat, and I think the combat system is its most fully realized thing. I would contest the notion that it is just flying in circles. Like, if you're doing that with an eagle, like, you're not flying the eagle very well. Like, because it's the most maneuverable ship in the game, that's why it's still viable, because it can outturn anything. So, you can sort of, the idea is that you're kind of feathering your throttle to stay directly behind somebody so that your tiny guns can eventually wear a hole, and that's the game.
The example I'm thinking of is, like, I took a mission to go hunt down 3 pirates. I guess they're going to be NPC pirates, so that's maybe different from PvP. But, again, because my weapons are quite shit at this stage. Like, I don't have a 500,000 kitted out eagle. I've just got the kind of starter eagle with a couple of little tweaks. It was just ages of flying behind this guy. And, like, keeping behind him. But just laser, shield down, laser. My lasers are a little bit tired now. So put more power into the lasers. laser. And it was, like, just 6 minutes, and I was under no threat whatsoever in that time.
Do you think your dissatisfaction with the actual kind of boring mechanics of it, if they are indeed boring, but assuming they were boring, do you think your dissatisfaction with those would dissipate once they implement all the kind of high-level player-driven Space Corp stuff that EVE does? Because, I mean, you got invested in Worm for that reason, because it had that communal kind of metagame going on. Or not metagame, but larger scope to your actions, right?
Perhaps. I think some of that stuff is already in there. It just it feels like it's beyond, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but it feels like I'm beyond where I am at this stage. Like, it feels like it's quite a linear progression curve, and like I think it's like, you're probably right about the docking thing. It feels like there are a bunch of challenges it introduces early on, which are supposed to become trivial, and then you're able to automate them, and then your challenges change to more nuanced, interesting things at that point. So at this point, combat for me is flying around behind a guy, lasering him, and doing a little bit of power shifting between the 3 different things, but it feels like there'll probably be a point, actually, to be more specific, like, at this point my interdict module requires me to be 2 kilometers away from the person I'm interdicting, which is really close when you're traveling at high speed. And it's the same for whether I want to scan for someone to see if they've got a bounty or not. I've got to remain within range of them while speeding around at high speed for quite a little while. But as I get more money, I can buy devices that allow me to do it from 3 kilometers away or 5 kilometers away and further away. So that would stop being a challenge. So I'm presuming at that point the challenge would be more about granular power control or shifting stuff between modules, or switching off flight assist so you're using proper Newtonian physics rather than looping around. And there would be a point where the things that are challenging at the moment would tail off into nothingness, and a new, perhaps more interesting curve would arc up to take its place. But I am somewhere in the middle of those graphs where everything has just kind of dipped down low, and the things that used to be interesting no longer are, and the things that will be interesting aren't, it seems to me, going to be interesting for quite a while, because the only kind of visible curve that it tells you is the ship thing, and you're just looking at the ship prices, thinking,
how do I get there? I'll say the moment it clicked for me from the combat track, because I think trading probably is emptier, was when I realised that I could take out ships that were much bigger than what I thought I could take out. Like, you usually see a Cobra Mark III, and that's worth like 10 times more than my ship. And it's like, oh shit, from the top, it's huge. Like, it's a big fat It's a big fat boy from the top. It sits in the back. And that means I'm in a ship that can turn faster than it. So it doesn't really matter. If he can't hit me, I win, like, eventually. And that was then exciting. And yeah, the fight took a while, but taking down a ship that has like a 30,000 credit bounty on it, which is as much money as my ship's worth almost. And it's much bigger than mine. And I can take it out by being cleverer than it. That was like, oh shit, what else can I do? And then I was like, and then I hit a point where I couldn't take out. Like, I couldn't do Anacondas. Anacondas are the most expensive ship in the game. It's like a 60 million credit gumbo. And it's like, this is not gonna happen in an Eagle. Like, if it wings me, I'm dead. So, what could I do it in a Viper? And I can almost do it in a Viper now. And like, that's the game. Like, that's where you get onto the next track. And that's then a matter of really specific choices when it comes to loadout. Like, my new ship is lasers that are just there to take out shields. And then a pair of cannons, like they're just howitzers mounted to the front of the ship, and they're probably too big for the ship they're on. But their job is to target subsystems and just take out powers, just take out subsystems on bigger ships. And that's like really cost-effective bounty hunting, because I'm taking out ships worth 60 million in a ship worth 600,000. And like, because it's a game about economics ultimately, like it's fucking space capitalism, the game, right? Like, that's part of the way it manifests there is like, how cost effectively can I make a shitload of money from bounties? Because each of those Anaconda bounties is 150,000 credits at that point. And at that point, that 6 million next ship doesn't look so unattainable. And that's become the game for me. Like, so I actually agree completely that it sort of trades off from one thing to another. But I think in every case, the thing that the player doesn't know is, oh shit, there's something much more profitable I could be doing than what I'm doing now. Like, if I wanted to grind out for my super upgraded Viper, killing Sidewinders for 1,200 credits, because that's what I thought I was capable of, it would feel interminable and like a huge grind. But when I realized that I could hover around until a 30,000 credit bounty show up and take out that guy and have a much more interesting fight, the whole game became more interesting. Because now every one of those bounties gets me substantially towards the next part of my ship, the next power coupling, and you get really into power distributors. Getting really into power distribution tech is, I got A3 grade power distributors in my ship today. Hold down that laser. That laser never gets tired. That laser never needs snap.
I remember early on in Eve, I had a little notepad where I'd draw tables of, if I have this kind of ablative armor, and then I fit these 3 other armor modules, then my total armor versus my top speed goes down to this, and I actually filled out every cell of the table by hand on paper to figure out, oh, this is a sweet spot. If I have 5 of these and then only 2 overdrive modules, then I can do this. Chris, do you play with the, in the, like, Newtonian physicsy thing or the auto?
Sometimes. And so this is the thing I was going to say is, like, you start to, like, so the games I really love are the ones where you start to develop your own strategies. Like, so it's not necessarily like I can play the game differently every time. I kind of want to play the game the same way every time, but I want it to be because I invented that methodology or whatever, right? Like, I don't know, Space Cam is a really good example of a game like that I love because it allows me to invent my way of doing the thing. So, I realized when I was, when I flew Eagles, and I flew Eagles for a long time, the one thing that would always fuck me up is a head-on encounter. Like, if you fly an Eagle, you want to stay behind somebody. So whenever I fight an Eagle now, I kind of know that. I know he can outturn me. So I do this thing where I run away in a straight line, switch off Newtonian physics, and slowly turn around. So I use my maneuvering thrusters to turn so that I'm not then flying backwards. But rather than like slow down and then start flying backwards, what the Eagles do is they chase, and then they just see you kind of just flip over, and then you're still going backwards. And then you switch flight assist off, and then because the really confuses flight assist, like which way do you hope you're going? Because you've just flipped 180 degrees on your, like, I don't know, the plane of your velocity, and so it sort of stops you and starts to pull you forward again, and that kind of like does this thing where the Eagle's in that kind of like, shit, no, and then they just fly directly into like all 4 guns, and usually that is like one pass of that is enough to kill an Eagle outright. And like, that then is like, I don't know, I mean, that's probably like newbie level stuff. I see people do things on like YouTube that are incredible. But, like, that feels like the Thurston maneuver to me. Like, you know what I mean? That little moment where you see the Eagle try and bank away, but it's already in range of your gimbaled weapon, so they track it, and it's just like, yeah, get fucked. And then it explodes. Like, space. That transferring into that stuff is why I still love the game, I think. Because, I got to the, I don't want to kill any more Sidewinders thing. But then it traded off into this kind of different game.
I like the fact that it's a game almost built entirely out of sex metaphors. Space docking, hard points, interdiction. I'll get you in range of my gimbaled weapon.
Go super cruising.
I want to develop the Smith maneuver of trading.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right now,
selling titanium for 45.6. Said it couldn't be done.
Yeah.
Maybe
it could be like a power docking, like a 360 no scope.
Coming in hot and trading your goods without stopping.
Yeah. Buy some fucking titanium. Who was that?
And I'm out of it.
You're like, I'm okay with it. Just like the assumption is that if you complain about the trading, that you're complaining about it being a chore. Totally fine with it being a chore. I want it to be a chore. It's got to be a chore that feels like it's building towards something. And a lot of the time, it's just you fly around for 2 hours and you don't find a good trade route. And it's like, well, I didn't accomplish anything in those 2 hours. And those 2 hours are made partially unsatisfying because instead of feeling like you're interacting with this really nice interface that they've built, you're going to the commodities market station, taking a screenshot of it, going to Orphan View on a second monitor, bringing up that screenshot so you can then compare it at the next menu, because there is no intergalactic internet that links these things. And you can buy trade data, but all that does is tell you where things are importing or exporting from. It doesn't tell you the actual values of how much they're selling at that place.
I think it makes the mistake of treating trading like the boring thing you do on the way to doing something else, rather than be all and end all. Like if you want an anaconda of your own really quickly, you trade. So it's profitable, but it's like the idea is you put your 10 hours of trading in on profitable routes. Like I could do that. Like I've got enough money to buy a fairly good trading ship and kit it out, but I don't want to. Like I kind of want to do the game that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I agree with that. Like I think at the moment probably the end game is you buy the biggest gunboat you can find, you load it up, and you go and annoy capital ships, and then you've run out of elite to play. And yeah, I think so I'd agree with that. I think it needs maybe a more even progression curve, like a tier of ships between that first lot and the second lot, equivalent to the current, like the Cobra and the Viper for trading. And it needs more stuff of everything, every kind.
It certainly needs more choice in terms of like NPC missions from stations. Like, and I'm kind of fine with that just being a precursor to the PvP stuff or the people-driven stuff, which is the so-called real game. But, and I spoke to you about this at lunchtime, but there's a lot of stations where there just wasn't anything that I could do there. And sometimes a station would have no missions at all. And it's, well, just make your generator, make sure that every station has at least one mission of every type. That would give me stuff to do. And like, as a new player, when you're just looking for the game, it's just like, the game's not here. I guess I'll fly to the next station and hope the game is there.
One thing that I think, would be cool is, because occasionally you find out, like, there'll be stuff you can do just for reputation, but it'll be like, this system needs food. And that kind of suggests a really interesting narrative, like, why is the system starving? And who am I if I go and buy food somewhere else and just give it to them for free? Like, at the moment, that kind of, like, feels like a nice thing to do, and it gets you reputation that can unlock other missions. But it'd be kind of nice to have, like, I know they don't want, like, a single player, like, flipping a system from one faction to another for, like, the big story stuff they're doing. But on a smaller level, it kind of needs a little bit more personality when it comes to saying, like, hey, we like you here because you gave us a load of free food one time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, next time someone scans you and you've got a small bounty on you, they go, actually, don't worry about it. That bounty's less than the food you brought last week. You know, like, something that gave you a sense of the persistency of your actions, even if it wasn't, like, who owns this star, which is, like, the level the game thinks about when it comes to, like, player choice, I guess. Thomas Senior.
Hello. I played two things over Christmas, and I'll open it up to the floor as to which one I talk about. Banner Saga and Dragon Age were two big ones.
I got things to say about Dragon Age.
Excellent. With whom?
I played both of those games over the Christmas break.
Fantastic. And Dragon Age then. Let's choose that. Yes, really good. And it's really good for reasons that I can't possibly talk about, because they're entirely narrative based, which is the big kind of frustration about talking about RPGs. But, so I'll have to focus on the negative part, which is the combat, and combat in general in RPGs. It's often A, bad, and B, completely disconnected from the rest of the game, in a way that, Tom, you were talking earlier about Invisible Ink, and one of the reasons why it's brilliant is that everything feeds into everything else, and is kind of systemically whole, you know, the scale's constantly tipping based on what you're doing. And that's something I really love about the Banner Saga, because you can sacrifice more men to fight less people in close combat, and there's a constant kind of supplies versus soldiers versus combat thing that you're juggling all the time with your caravans. Whereas in Dragon Age, combat entirely is just, it is a chore, but it's like the bad kind of chore because it's such a big part of the game. Like you're constantly...
Sure, but not in a good way, like you might think.
So that should be really exciting and it should be like interesting because it pictures itself as this tactical combat where you can pause time and kind of arrange your dudes. Whereas actually it's like, apart from, unless you're fighting a dragon, then it's entirely just autopilot and the visuals are just so noisy you can't possibly tell what the fuck is happening.
Yeah, I think like clarity is my big issue with the combat. I just don't know what's going on. Even after playing it for like 30 hours now, I still, in a given fight, I don't know what's going on. Is that guy properly frozen or is he only partially frozen? Does that count as incapacitated or is that only immobilized? And
It's like
basically a bonus when I do this. And like, even just like, when someone's knocked down and I do I'm a warrior, so I have this like, big hammer smash type thing, regardless of what weapon I'm holding, that says it does, like bonus damage to incapacitated. But it does like it's a combo finisher if they're incapacitated, and it also does 300% extra damage if they're knocked down. I don't know if those are two different things, or if they're like one is a subset of the other one, or if they
or
can be both.
incapacitated might be an umbrella term that incorporates frozen and asleep.
Yeah,
and
it
all
seems
the other
frozen
things.
seems to work for that, but then again, sometimes people are just very cold. They're not frozen yet; they're just completely white and
They're
not
chilled.
moving very
That's
fast.
what it's called. It's called
Yeah.
chilled and frozen.
But so even just every fight, I charge in with my charge move, and that knocks everyone on their feet, and then I use my big hammer smash to hit them while they're down. And sometimes it goes into slow-mo and looks awesome.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't do that, but still does loads of damage. And sometimes it doesn't do that, and it doesn't do loads of damage. And I'm just like, I don't know what happened. I just don't know what happened. And even like just basic stuff like, and this is probably common to most RPG combat, but you'll be shooting at a guy and it pops up with immune, and you don't know what it's immune to, because I have, like, my weapon is doing about 3 different types of damage. 6 different spells are coming in at the same time from other people, and it's telling you about those as well. So I just don't know what's going on, even after all this time.
Yeah, it's not a problem unique to Dragon Age. It's like a lot of RPGs coast along on, average combat. It's just a thing that you have to do, that you have to get through to get to the interesting stuff. But it's still worth calling out stuff for doing it, for just having a combat system. It's not.
Yeah, and I think, I suppose Banner Saga's turn-based, so it sort of has an advantage that way. But there's nothing stopping Dragon Age doing the same kind of clarity, because it has pause, it has a tactics mode where you can take your time and think about things. But I only played a bit of the Banner Saga, but I understood the combat right away, and I saw the really, there's really great trade-offs to be made, and really interesting interplays of stuff, and I just knew what was going on. I could see the battlefield, I understood what all the things meant. And I think without that clarity, I'm just never going to enjoy combat.
It's weird because Dragon Age Origins had, I think, a very clear combat system, and it was really kind of helpfully binary in some ways, so that you knew if you saw a dog-like enemy, that almost all the dog-like enemies in the game could do something where they pin a character down and maul them. And when you see that animation, you kind of get straight away, you don't really need to be told what type of incapacitated that is. It's type of incapacitated where there's a dog on you. and I think it was Dragon Age 2 that introduced the cross-class combo stuff, which I've never understood. And I consider myself a pretty big fan of these games, and someone who's played a lot of them. But I don't still really understand how that works. And crucially, it's never necessary. So you don't need to. I think maybe the bigger thing is it never makes you understand it. The one thing Inquisition does get right, but it's a good thing on a bad thing, is the dragon fights are a lot easier if you invest the time into crafting items designed to kill that dragon. So you might know that you're going after a storm dragon that breathes electricity. And so you get, your Inquisitor a new suit of armor that's totally electric resistant, like a hazmat suit for that dragon. And you get, a weapon with a rune that does more damage to dragons or whatever. And when you've done that, and that fight is then a lot easier, that feels satisfying. But the satisfying bit of your strategy happened entirely outside. And I'd love to see them use that kind of crafting system, almost Monster Hunter style, gearing up to support a really good combat system. And it'd still be a good system. But it's such a mess in so many ways.
The funny thing is that they sort of catered to, or tried to cater to people like me who, I don't know, Mass Effect I wanted to play the combat. I really liked, the choice of classes and that, and when I picked one, I tried a couple of different ones, but each time I was like, yes, I really want to be the Infiltrator, I really want to be the Vanguard, and I want to do this particular thing. And I really enjoyed it, and so I wanted the combat to be good, and so I didn't play, Mass Effect 3 introduced the narrative mode where combat was kind of trivial. I only played that to test it, and it was good. It was you really couldn't die, combat was over quickly, and if you didn't care about combat, it was the way to play. And Dragon Age Inquisition has a casual difficulty mode, And I've been playing on that for most of the game because I'm just like, I just don't care about combat. I don't need it to be good. I just want to get through it and get to the story stuff. But it doesn't make the fights take any less time. They take the same amount of time as if it was on medium or hard. It's just, there's less, there are fewer insta-kill attacks. Like, I've played through casual, like, for about 20 hours. And then, the only reason I changed at all was that as a warrior, I've specialized in, as a Reaver, and Reavers do more damage the less health they have. So all of my cool abilities, I'm like, okay, great, I can do more damage now, so fights will be over quicker. That's why I chose it. And then I realized it's so easy that I can't lose health. So
Just
then
go out in your pants.
I thought, okay, I'll up the difficulty to medium. And it was exactly the same. Fights took the same amount of time, same amount of health was lost, i.e. none. And it wasn't difficult, it was just a chore. It just took a long time to kill the things. So then, okay, well, I'll put it up to hard then. And it's exactly the same. I couldn't tell the difference between hard and casual, which is crazy. That should be like completely night and day. And the only time it showed was when we finally got to the boss of that section. On hard, I went through the whole fight all the way down to like the boss's last 10% of health. Completely trivial, no one died, no one lost a significant amount of health. And then suddenly I just got killed in one hit, and then one of my other guys got killed in one hit, and the other two couldn't survive on their own, so they got killed as well, and we got wiped. So I turned it back down to casual, and the fight went the same way, except at the end that didn't happen. So it's like, that's the only difference, is sometimes you get insta-killed on hard, but otherwise it's the same. And whatever, like, casual would be perfect for me if it was just like, you do 10 times as much damage. Like, if the challenge of combat isn't the point, let's just make it really satisfying. Just breeze in, smash them with your massive sword, and they go flying, and everyone's just dead, and you're the cool Inquisitor, and then you move on.
Dragon Age 2 kind of tried to do that a bit, where, like, you finish guys super quickly in Dragon Age 2, so it's satisfying as a rogue, because I'd press a button, materialise behind someone, and they would literally just chunk into like a cloud of gore. And I was like, that was good. And then I'll just do that for every wave. But then it artificially lengthens combat by having just fucking waves come at you from nowhere, which never made any sense. And completely destroyed the idea of positioning on the battlefield, because any enemy can come from anywhere at any time. So it's just
dogs rappelling out windows.
Yeah. Like spiders coming down from the sky. That kind of thing.
This is the great bit where you go up a mountain and you're on a mountainside with no cover around anywhere and just some bandits fall out of the sky. It's like,
oh guys, you're pretty good.
They make jokes about that in Dragon Age Inquisition, but it's kind of like, why did you do that in the first place?
Yeah. I think they want something immediately satisfying, but the combo stuff is really frustrating because I made my own combos in Dragon Age Origins. I had the spells were fucking amazing in that game. Like there's a spell where you could poison someone, and when they died, it's called Poison Bomb, and exploded.
That's in every game.
Yeah, it is in every game, but it's useless in all the other games.
Yeah.
In the first game, it was actually it's the way I just ruin a mob. Just pick the weakest guy and set them in Poison Bomb. If the explosion kills anyone else, they go Poison Bomb as well, and you set all these chain reactions of popping enemies. And
I think I actually had that on my sword, which is awesome. The crafting in Dragon Age Inquisition is great.
Yeah.
And it works in a really weird way. It took a long time to get my head around it, but it's basically, you find a schematic, and the schematic just says, the thing that's frustrating me about it is I find Masterwork Greatsword schematic. Okay, what's its stats? Is it good? Is it better than what I've got right now? And it just doesn't have any stats. There's no way to examine it. There's no way to kind of look at what it will produce. And all it has is slots, and it's like, okay, you need 12 metal for the main slot, and 8 metal for the utility slot, and then 2 cloth for the defense slot. I don't know what the hell any of that means. But as you're mining metal and picking you just pick stuff up from the ground, basically. All of those metals have the properties, and this metal will do, for each piece of it, you'll get +1 strength if it's in a main slot, and you'll get +1 magic resistance if it's in a defense slot, and this if it's in a utility slot. So the schematics are really just giving you the space to put in as much metal and cloth as you can. So a good schematic is just one that lets you put a lot of metal and cloth into your sword, which is weird, but also it feels really cool, because it's kind of personal. Like I remember when I picked up all that Viridian, and now I've got a green sword because I picked up all that Viridian, and that has this stat that's really useful for my character. I think it's just plus strength. And I found this one rune, and I think I know where I found it. And that rune, sorry, it wasn't a rune actually, it was,
Masterwork material.
The Masterwork material, it's just, I think it's a piece of Nog skin that's fade touched.
Yeah.
Fade touched means it's magical in some way, and that means you can use it as the centerpiece of a weapon.
Marsh is dead.
My entire just rolled all the way back out of the back of his head.
Is this better or worse than the graphs?
I'll take the graphs.
But that
touch your
does...
Nog skin.
See, that is sexual. That is what does the walking bomb thing. So that gives me, every time I hit someone, there's a 10% chance they become a walking bomb, which is cool. It almost never has an effect. But Dorian, he's a mage with a necromancer speciality, and he has an ability that sounds kind of cool. That if you like haunt someone with it, if they die during it, they come back as a spirit of the same creature on your side, and they fight for you. But he always casts it on the last thing we have to kill, and everything else is already dead. And so when that thing dies, then a friendly spirit comes up, looking exactly like the dog we just killed, and it just stands there.
Well
and
done.
combat can't end until it's gone, because technically it's an enemy. So we're all just standing there with like our swords out, just kind of looking at this weird ghost dog that walks around. Fuck's sake, Dorian, can you just stop doing that?
It's kind of a Dorian move to troll you like
Yeah,
that. That's quite in character, actually. I love the crafting stuff. I've got, you can rename your crafted weapons as well, which is fantastic. Every game should do that.
Yeah. Particularly because when I made mine, it was called Strong Great Sword.
Great strong sword is a different sword.
I've got Lyra's Coat of Stabbing, where there's a 10% chance whenever she attacks, she unleashes just 5 stabs, spectral stabs. Lyra's the name of my Inquisitor, so yeah. It's cool. The rest of the game's fucking cool. Like if you want big fantasy romp with like fucking amazing music that will make you tingle. If you tingle physically when someone lifts up a sword and everyone goes oh, then fucking play Dragon Age Inquisition, because it's just the best.
My hard points are so gimbal.
So ultimately it's great. But yeah, I love Mass Effect 3's combat. You're right, like that sustained its own multiplayer mode. It was so good.
Well, and that's really telling for Dragon Age multiplayer, because when I reviewed it, like, I played a bunch of multiplayer and it just doesn't work. Like, because the combat system, like, the thing that makes that combat system interesting, when it does become interesting, is the fact that you're controlling 4 characters. If you were controlling if it was Mass Effect style, and you always controlled 1 character, it would be even worse, because you then wouldn't have, like, the benefit of, like, I can pause and go and play as the wizard for a bit if I'm bored of playing this guy. In multiplayer, when you start, you play a completely powerless, abilityless version of one of the classes, like 1 ability, and then you join up with 4 other people who are equally not powerful, and then you all use your 1 abilities through dungeons that are quite hard. Whereas in Mass Effect, your 1 ability, when you started, was shooting a gun. And shooting a gun is a game thing that has a lot more grit to it, right? Like, it's not just holding left click on a dude.
I think the thing I like about all BioWare games really, and so carries over to Dragon Age in full effect, is the character stuff and just getting to know the characters and kind of like having relationships with them. And it's really surprising how radically different Dragon Age feels to Mass Effect in every other way, because all of the kind of basic same systems are there. And when I watched the recap of Dragon Age 1's plot in the Keep thing, where you sort of pick what the world state is, and it tells you what happened in Dragon Age 1. And I played most of Dragon Age 1. I played it for like 80 hours. And I was watching it, I was just thinking, I don't remember any of this. I remember some of the names and some of the places, but I did not follow the plot at all. Just none of it stuck with me, none of it I cared about. Whereas Mass Effect 1, it's been about the same amount of time since I played that, but I can remember not just the overall plot, but I remember the individual sections. You're always going on these detours where it's not actually really relevant to the main plot, but it gets you something that is relevant. And I can remember, like, there were 2 different mind control plots in Mass Effect 1, and I remember what both of them were. So it's really weird how, like, with those 2 series, even though they're structurally so similar, and they have so many of the same elements, like Mass Effect really stuck with me, and Dragon Age really didn't. And Dragon Age Inquisition, I'm sort of finding the same thing with the main plot a little bit. There have been some moments in the main plot which I really like, including the one you're talking about, Tom. But once it gets back to kind of business as usual, okay, we've got to track down the big bad thing and defeat it in some way, I kind of like lose interest again. But the character stuff is really great. And the thing I really like about it is that the characters have arcs, which is, I think, something they mostly got the hang of with Mass Effect 2, when they introduced loyalty missions and everyone would start out kind of at one level of friendliness with you, and once you did their loyalty missions, you would actually get some backstory on them and find out, because it would be personal to them, it would be some thing from their past that you were investigating. And then B, obviously, during the mission, you're talking to them and learning more about them that way. And then C, you've actually done them a favour that's kind of out of your way, and so you have this kind of, you've sacrificed something for them, and it makes sense that they are grateful to you, and your relationship actually changes. And I've had that totally with Dragon Age Inquisition, because like the character of Cassandra, I just had no interest in it at all, really, at first, and then the only reason I did start spending time with her and try and do her her loyalty missions, and indeed tried to do her. It's because I'm a female character and I'm desperate for a lesbian relationship, so I'm just flirting with every woman I possibly can. And one by one, I keep finding out they're straight. So it's like, no, that person's straight. No, that person's straight. No, that person's straight.
Only two of them are straight.
Okay, well, those are the two. And yeah, but just through the course of actually doing her backstory mission and finding out more about her, she's like incredibly gruff, like irritated person all the time. And so it's great to like actually see the softer side of her and kind of get an idea of like why she's like that and see it break down sometimes.
One of the best character stuff that Inquisition does that other BioWare games don't necessarily do as well is fucking arguments. Like, just people, like, characters in your own inner circle just fucking yelling at each other and having a massive disagreement. You're just kind of there in between and kind of mediating between them. But it's like, I've not seen people argue like this in a video game before. Like, they actually fucking kind of dislike each other at the moment.
I think Dragon Age has always done that well. I think Dragon Age 2 does that as well. I think Dragon Age has always been better than Mass Effect at giving your companions some autonomy. Like, they are following you maybe for their own reasons, but like, Shepard's companions, like, I mean, you know, the glib way of looking at Mass Effect 2 is, the thing you resolve in all of their lives is their dad. Like, something's wrong with their dad, you fix their dad, and then you are their dad. And you're everyone's dad on the Space Dad boat. And, you know, and everyone is, like, bound to you for life. And, like, whereas Dragon Age has always been better at having some people who don't even really like you that much, but they're there for their own reasons, and then the game ends and they leave. And they don't, you know what I mean? It's not like you saved something or you fixed something in their brain so that it turned out they were waiting their whole lives to meet you because kind of a dick, or they are kind of a dick, or whatever, and I've always appreciated that.
I was hoping we'd all move into the one house together. Yeah, exactly. Forever, happily forever after. No problems. But it's great if you look at fancy. Marsh, what have you been playing over Christmas?
I've also been playing a fantasy game, sort of fantasy.
Yeah,
it's fantasy. Yeah, I've been playing Game of Thrones, the Telltale game. It's a big old load of guff.
It is a big
load of guff. And
I know
it's
good things
interesting
about it. Lots of people were
raving
about it when it came out.
They're really wrong.
That's what happened.
But it's interesting you talking about arguments in that, because I think you're right. Like, in all the BioWare games that I've played, the arguments do feel kind of organic in as much as you're not necessarily being presented with contrived argument, contrived counter-argument in perfect equilibrium. You must decide between these two things, although that sometimes does happen. Mm-hmm. But you do get a sense that the characters just kind of, you know, have their own desires and motivations. That's definitely not the case in the Game of Thrones Telltale game, where you're deciding between, you know, character A and character B, and you can just see all the decision trees and that you know the problems that are going to occur with either of those characters. And it's just a complete mirror image of the experience that you have playing the other character. There's no actual choice you're making. And it's so frustrating when you're dealing with that fiction, because that's completely antithetical to the nature of George R.R. Martin's universe, which is not that, everything is difficult and bad, but he's trying to subvert the normal kind of mythic arc that you expect. You know, good characters going on this heroic quest, they achieve their destiny and become powerful. Yeah. You know, he subverts that by saying, well, things aren't like that in reality. You know, just random events can just fuck up reality. But in this, it goes the other way of saying, you know, reality is bad, but it's contrived at every single point. You know, you just know that there is a good option and a bad option. Sorry, that you're just choosing between bad options and they're just going to have the same bad, but different effects in either case. And it's bad on a whole other bunch of levels. Like, fictionally, it just feels like they've revisited a lot of the stuff from the books in a really kind of touristy, boring way. It looks kind of naff as well. Like, the engine just can't draw the stuff that they're trying to draw, and then it doesn't try. Which is a problem when you're trying to draw lots of people on screen at a time and then have a battle. It just looks duff. They have this weird shader. I don't know if it's just my graphics card. I got a video graphics card. I guess it's meant to make everything look kind of like a watercolor painting. Yeah. But what it does is it makes everything look fluffy. like Viva Pinata. You know, it's exactly that shader. Like, there'll be it only applies certain times. I think it's like a depth of field effect times by this other shader. Yeah. And it just makes all the battlements look like they're made out of feathers. It's really fucking strange.
And Viva Westeros.
Yeah. Well, it's strange because, like, a lot of background elements are painted. So, like, I say painted, it looks like they've had the Photoshop like paint daub filter applied to them.
Yeah.
But then the characters are still 3D models that have that effect to a lesser degree on their textures. But because they're 3D models and they're polygonal and they're always going to be more crisp than the environments they're walking through. And so, like, it works if you kind of like blur your eyes. If you deliberately if you deliberately like pretend you're just looking at shapes and colours.
But the thing is, it's moving. It's really distracting. You got, Tyrion in the foreground looking completely crisp and clean, and this feathery battlements in the background undulating. It's just really
walks
strange.
away and becomes a tiny furry Tyrion.
And you crack him open, and really sweets come out. Sorry, capons. He's full of capons. Yeah. So I didn't really enjoy it. I don't like the QTE stuff. I think that's really bad. And actually, like Dragon Age, or at least the new version, there doesn't seem to be an easy mode. In previous Telltale games, you can just make the QTEs trivial, so you don't need to be thwarted by them and
Hammer Q and then E.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they just. I don't know. I think they've changed the way that the gamepad inputs work on this from The Wolf Among Us, but it's kind of unintuitive. Now you kind of need to. I really don't understand how it works. You kind of move the thumbstick to kind of grab onto something, and you hold down on a right trigger and then pull it back towards you, but it doesn't seem to latch onto it. You don't seem to have a cursor that you're drawing across the screen like you do in the other one. You just kind of thumb in the direction of it, and so it's I was kind of flicking it, thinking, where's my cursor? And there isn't a cursor. So anyway, that was weird. But the main thing, my main problem with it, which I think is just endemic in all of Telltale's games, is that you have these conversations where you need to make a choice in the dialogue. There's a timed thing, so the conversation is still going on. And sometimes the dialogue options that you're choosing refer to the things being talked about while you're making the dialogue choice. And sometimes they refer to the very final thing, which has not yet been said. And you don't know. You just have to fucking choose which one of those options you're going to do, Telltale. That is if your game is about dialogue, choosing dialogue options in the heat of the moment, that's something you need to just decide upon. You can't just do one and then do the other, because they don't make any sense. You're in the middle of a conversation talking to your sister and brother, and your brother will be gibbering on about something, and then there'll be a dialogue option saying, that's not how it works, and I'll select that. And then you'll reply to your sister, that's not how it works, because she'll say something different. You're like,
It's funny, like the King's Landing parts, which are all about subtleties of meaning and saying one thing, like they're explicitly about saying one thing and believing another, and it's all, they try and simulate the politics of King's Landing in a way that has, someone's obviously really thought about how they're going to construct those trees, but it's really let down by the ambiguity of when, not just what you're going to say, but who you're saying it to and what you're replying to. Like,
everyone will remember how confusing this is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's cause I played it through just after you did, I think, and I played it trying to do, I like the books a lot. I'm trying to be the most sensible person in Westeros, right? The reason these characters, even though they've gotten everywhere apparently, the reason they don't show up in the books of the TV show is because they were so sensible. They didn't take,
nothing of what note happened.
Yeah, exactly. Which is don't stick your neck out too far, but don't hide at the back. Just, be in the middle, the safe middle of the Game of Thrones universe where sometimes bad things happen, but you'll be fine. And so I ended up using the, silent option for loads of those conversation stuff because often, the thing that Cersei Lannister is telling you is going to be a trap. None of the responses look like they'll be sensible in the face of a trap, but I don't know what the trap is yet, so I'm just going to say nothing. Which I think is probably the best way of doing it, and then afterwards Tyrion's like, you're a canny one. I'm just now really confused and scared.
I just don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the voice acting also is a bit weird. Some of it's just the characters from the show talking, and they do a fine but slightly stilted job. But they're fine for video games.
It's the same actors, and they sound like they're in a studio. But yeah.
But then the cast members who've been brought on board are this weird kind of slightly Irish, maybe slightly Yorkshire. Who knows?
No one has been told where the north is. No. It's somewhere, but it's somewhere's north. One guy briefly sounds Australian for no reason. And it's all over the shop. It really is.
The older kid you play as has just the flattest delivery.
Yeah.
Of all the people. Of the bit I played.
There's a a coal boy that shows up who's obviously going to be one of Varys's spies or something.
Oh, yeah.
He shows up to give you information. He's like, you should totally listen to me and help me. You've got friends in the city. I was like, nope, that's how people get killed. Shh, go away. Like, that's how people die in King's Landing. Just fuck off. But he's presented like he's an 11-year-old boy. Like, but he's got the voice of a grown man. He's like a soot-covered, like, coal boy. And he's like, alright. Can I come in and give you information?
He's very well spoken as well for a coal boy.
Hello. Yes. But nonetheless, very gruff as well for an 11-year-old.
Yeah. There's a kind of, it does come to a denouement which is, you know, exciting and, aggravating in a way which I suppose, aggravating in a different way. So like a lot of the game seems to be kind of having your designs, thwarted by the contrivances of the game, which is aggravating, but, things happen at the end of the episode which are aggravating, but in a way which kind of feels more fictionally legitimate. But I also don't buy the reasons that those things happen. Like, they don't seem psychologically consistent with other things.
And the one of the problems the game has is because it's taking place in the middle of the fiction, right? It takes place, I guess, just after season 4 of the show. Season 3 of the show. Between books 4.
Well, yeah, you know it can't really have any material impact.
And so one of the problems is that it includes characters, you know, as antagonists that you know can gain no material comeuppance or even real inconvenience on behalf of your actions, because you know they've got another, you know, they are still doing things in the last book that George R. R. Martin wrote. Like, it's not going anywhere with that. And its attempts to solve that, it's again this sort of like middle of the road thing where you play as the Babby Starks. The Babby Starks of House Babby Stark. And you're just the Starks. Like, you're just a lot like the Starks. You're Bannerman of the Starks, and you got kids in every area code. Cause like, you know, you've got...
There's a guy in Essos.
Random guy hanging out with Daenerys. There's a random person at King's Landing. Like, you got people everywhere. And your worst enemies are basically like the mini Boltons. And, they're Bannerman of the Boltons. And so, to the extent that you have a conflict, which is not nuanced in the slightest, they're just dicks, and you're the Starks. Like...
That's the other thing that's disappointing about it, is that there is a sense that in Game of Thrones, nobody is particularly good or particularly evil. Like, everybody exists on a spectrum. Sure, you get some outlier psychos, but, on the whole, just people have their own internal motivations. And this is the kind of, the major mini Bolton, is just this kind of big blundering oafish arsehole who is obviously just a dick. Like, there's no kind of, it'd be a much more interesting game because your house is being threatened in a political war by this guy who's, because of the rise of the Boltons has gone in the ascendant, and because of the fall of the Starks, your house is in the doldrums. And it would be much more interesting if there was any element of him that was reasonable, that you felt that you could bargain with, because then it would become a game about the kind of political negotiations that two people have. But it's just out of the question, because he's just a cartoon character. It's just a waste.
Yeah. I think it's fastened down by having to have the characters from the show in the game, their likenesses and their voices, and kind of, it's no spoiler to say that which characters will be in future episodes, because on each episode screen shows you kind of, hey, you get to meet this guy, hey, you get to meet this.
Like
this
the
woman.
next week on Game of Thrones thing has like it just has a silent clip of Jon Snow looking around a corner like,
Hey, meet this guy, and it's that kind of fan service approach. I understand why they would, from a kind of marketing perspective, have to get those characters in.
They shouldn't, though.
But it crushes the story. They can't do anything.
We were talking about this. Like, honestly, I'd love that game to have been set during like Robert's Rebellion.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, just pick a part of the fiction that hasn't been done somewhere else. Like, they've picked the house that is legitimately from the books, but it's only been mentioned like once in passing.
I'd love to see what Ares was like.
Yeah.
That would be a great character to meet.
Or what Rhaegar was like.
So yeah.
Like, and you could have Eris was the Mad King.
Oh yes,
yeah, Rhaegar's
right.
son.
Good.
But like you could have, and then you can have Lena Headey come in and play young Cersei. You get a completely different look at that character because Cersei's really interesting when she's young, or young Tyrion as well. Like you can still have the fan service moments. You can't have, Arya and Daenerys and Jon Snow, but like that would be way more interesting. And it brings me on to what we were talking about the other day, which is to give Telltale some credit. They solved exactly this problem before in their best series, in the first season of The Walking Dead, when presented with a fiction that was about, like, a white cop in the South leading people to a zombie apocalypse, they made a game about a black prisoner in the South. They just took the fiction in a different, some of the same elements, and the nature of Lee Everett's crime is really important to, like, how you act and how you play that character and stuff, but they deliberately engaged with the fiction in a completely different way, while being sort of structurally similar. and did something that the source material hadn't done with the fiction, and created something really good, arguably something that's better than the TV show, for example, because it goes off in its own direction.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because of Game of Thrones is a bigger license that carries more studio pressure with it or something, but it feels very, very, very safe, where Walking Dead didn't. And it's a shame that they haven't carried that lesson over, because it's a one-to-one comparison. It's like, which adaptation of an HBO show is going to be have a more interesting relationship with its source material? The one where you play a completely different character to the main character in the show, or the one where you play a babby analog, down to people's hair colour, down to how people speak, down to the fate of individual members of that family at the same fucking events.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm probably not going to play the next one. Even though I'm a massive Game of Thrones fan, so I thought even if I didn't really get on with it because the problems with it being a Telltale game, I'd still be able to mine it for some lore. But actually, the lore's just such kind of like.
There's also a way you watch, listen, or read Game of Thrones, really.
Well, I don't know. I'm enough of a sucker for it now that I'd probably sop up any old kind of shit that George R. R. Martin popped out. But this is even this just feels so thin. You know?
Yeah. I mean, the best analogy for it is their almost adorably duff version of the Game of Thrones opening credits.
Yes!
Which is a CGI opening credits that's meant to look like a board game kind of unfolding on the world of Westeros. And they've remade it for the game in a much shitter, low poly version that looks like a kind of, like someone's reimagined it in Minecraft. And if they'd done it in Minecraft, it would have been impressive. But it's like, you have money to do this. And also
just use the CG version from the TV.
They already made it.
You don't need to recreate a CG thing in a lower poly engine.
And the moment for me is because it ends the prologue, and the prologue I think would be fairly strong if it was in the show. Like, if you imagine it beat for beat in the show with tighter editing and no QuickTime events.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the moment where it cuts to the title sequence would be a strong beat to kind of go like that. But what it did for me is kind of like a character really notably despawned, like in the middle of the screen. Someone spoke to thin air for a minute, then the screen went black, then it loaded for a bit, and then it went da, 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 da. It's like, oh shit, yeah.
I love the way QTE's messed with the kind of dramatic rhythm of people's back and forth in that game. Like, as you say, it's got these rushed decisions where you have to pick a conversation option, which kind of maintains a flow of conversation in a way that a lot of other games don't. In theory. And then it comes to the bit where I have to clean a sword, and I'm not swiping it right in the middle of a conversation. So I just spent ages kind of pouring it. I'm like a squire, just kind of like, better clean that sword, boy. And I was just standing there, just kind of like palming it gently, just stroking it for ages, because I can't press the right button.
See, I did it so quickly that he interrupted himself. He was like, the master's sword won't clean. What a lovely clean sword.
You've thrown me, I'm sorry.
Speaking of that, one thing we apparently still do not have the technology to do in Dragon Age Inquisition is interruptions. Still can't be done. There's no way to have someone interrupt someone else without a 3-second pause where the person has stopped speaking in the middle of a word, but no one has interrupted them, and then you just kind of sit awkwardly waiting for when is somebody going to say something that is supposed to have stopped them talking? Like, I don't understand why that's such a problem. Can't they record a bit more of the line than is actually meant to get interrupted, and then just keep playing that until the start of the next sound
clip? Must be like streaming the line from some part of the hard drive.
Just make it the same sound clip. You can merge the sound clip, make it one WAV file. I can do this. I know how to do this in Game Maker.
Maybe, God, it might be something to do with what happens if people skip that line of dialogue. Like, if they skip the line that's interrupted.
Yeah, so they want to skip to the interruption.
Like, does it skip to the interruption? Does it skip the, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have excuses for him, but.
They must have thought about this. They must have, like, played and gone, oh, that's a bit
it's
weird.
It's so weird, but, like, it's been a problem for, I mean, this is, like, a running joke now. It's been a problem for as long as there's been dialogue in games. And I've never seen it done correctly. And that's fine if there is some technical reason you can't do it, but just like write around it a little bit. Like, there's an interruption in every conversation in Dragon Age Inquisition, and it's always at least a 1 second pause. That
just don't have interruptions. Just have a character say, "What do you guys think?"
The character finishes the sentence.
Yeah. Shall we take a break?
Yeah. That's all coordinated.
Beautiful.
And that's the end of our break.
Right back to it.
Shall we do questions from questions?
Yes. Let's do them. Julius Jakobsen, who has helpfully given us a phonetic pronunciation of his name, says, "Dear Kraid and Kratos, dear Krogan. I had a phase when I played a lot of shmups, and I was annoyed by the bomb mechanic in these games. For the uninitiated, you have to dodge a bunch of projectile patterns, and there are consumables that temporarily clear the screen of all hazards. You normally use them right before you get hit, so your limited reaction time makes it an interesting risk-reward choice, where you have to use your judgment to predict if you will be able to avoid the incoming attack without using the bomb. However, in practice, it essentially removed the most interesting parts of the game for me. The punishment for failure is pretty steep in these games, so in situations where I doubt myself, I would always use the bomb, even though I'd like to try and survive without it. They are games that give me a button to not engage in their primary gameplay. For this reason, I hesitated a bit to play Hoplite, a tactics game that Tom Francis recommended. You clear levels with increasing difficulty and try to get a better score. Most importantly, there is a big incentive to retire in time while you're still alive. Surprisingly, I had a lot of fun with the game and didn't feel that this mechanic took anything away from it. After some contemplation, I came to the conclusion that this is because Hoplite has failure by degrees. I can, for example, see that a fight is going badly and try to reach the teleporter that makes you retire, instead of reaching the stairway that leads you to the next level. In shmups, you're a leaf soaring on the wind until you don't. Do you agree with me? Do you have other examples of games that offer the player a choice that effectively takes away a significant portion of the fun? Cheers! Julius!
What a good email.
Yeah.
That was really, smart design analysis. Invisible Ink. I'm just going to say it again. Because legitimately does have the same thing where, like I say, in every level, there's no objective you have to complete. You can leave any time you like as soon as you found the exit. And finding the exit, like I say, these days isn't too hard. So it could, lead to the same problem he's talking about, where it doesn't force you to engage with those really, really tough situations because you could just leave instead of taking on the tough situation. And that's the safe option. But your greed gets the better of you. You want the items that you can't afford so badly that you're just like, oh, come on, there's just a couple of safes through there. I can get them all. And I've been doing a video series of Invisible Ink, well, I've only done 2. And in the second one, I think the second one, it looks like it's going to be a really, really tough level, and I kind of regret taking it on. And at some point, I'm like, damn, I wish this was an easy level so I could go out and get all the safes. And I didn't notice this when I was playing, but when I look back at the video, I kind of skip to the end, and I look at the map, and all the safes are empty. I actually did go through all the safes. I just didn't think I was going to do it at any time. It's like, no, that's too daunting. I can't do that. I'm going to, get out as soon as it just is one more, actually. And actually, because that guy had to hide for 3 turns, now these safes are hacked, and I can open those ones. And so you end up, biting off more than you can chew, and that's kind of the central tension of the game.
Dark Souls has the soul amassing mechanic, whereby you've got lots of souls on you, it becomes increasingly risky to risk your life, but then there are areas where you're stretched and you kind of want to just get to the boss, and that kind of risk reward thing is nice. Tears of failure there.
I agree with what you're saying, but in some respects the bombs themselves are failure by degrees. You use a bomb, you've normally got 3 of them. Using one bomb is 1 degree of failure basically on your way, because eventually once you've run out of bombs, they're most often extremely hard to get back. And that's going to screw you later on. And so it is about still raising that risk-reward thing. The difference is that because it's not turn-based, most shmups, you're making that decision on the fly, and sometimes your thumb gets nervous and you press that button, when perhaps you shouldn't have. But that's part of the challenge of the game, is training yourself to raid closer to that edge.
So I wonder what it would be like if, when you were about to be hit by a bullet, you automatically activated a smart bomb if you had one. So you didn't have to think about it. You never had to make that call of I don't trust myself, so I'm going to get out of this difficult situation. So you got to play the difficult situation, but then if you did fail, the bomb would automatically be used to save you, and it would still be a spectrum of failure in that you would have one less thing. Because that's, unfortunately I can't remember the name of the game, but the guy who does Freeman's Mind actually does a series of Let's Plays where he kind of goes into usually really old games and says why they're good. And there's this shmup he really likes, which has really every item, every enemy in the game or thing you interact with has a flavor text you can read, I think, between missions, and they're all really, really funny. And then the other thing that he says just completely changes the whole game and makes it brilliant, where he doesn't like any other shoot 'em ups much, is that you just have like 3 hit points. So you don't die in one hit, and so he gets to actually like, come that close to failure and recover and stuff.
Yeah, maybe just having 3 hit points would be better than having bombs.
I mean, that was essentially what it would be.
Doesn't Geometry Wars have both? Doesn't it have both 3 bombs and 3 hit points?
No, when
3 lives?
it resets when you get killed. You do have 3 lives, but the level resets. Whereas
Not all the way back to the beginning though, just back to the
It clears it.
phase.
Yeah, it
so
clears
it clears it like a bomb does.
Yeah, but I mean,
it
wouldn't it
doesn't-
be better if you just survived and your thing flashed, but you still had the same number of enemies on screen, you still carried on killing them? Because then you're not disengaging with the challenge that is currently in play. You're just
There are games that like reset your combo meter when you get hit. DMC or Bayonetta would be an example of that, where there's character action games where you get hit and it doesn't knock you out because you have a health bar or whatever, but it's, if you're, similar to the Elite conversation, if your player's graduated beyond getting through the game to getting an S rank in the game, then it might as well be a one-shot kill because you're going to restart then anyway because you fucked it up. And that's maybe a way of doing it, where it's like, you have some other goal track.
I really like the ranking system in those fighting games. That's the best way to do it, I think.
Yeah, basically just bellow savage at me whenever I'm doing well. That'd be good.
In terms of my thoughts on like how Invisible Ink does this, I wrote basically a whole blog post about this, like specifically how Invisible Ink handles failure and the spectrum of failure it allows for, and how much you can fail in different ways. So we can link that in the show notes.
Good email.
Good email. A lot of our writers this month have Zeds in their name. Just going to say, that's interesting. Anyway.
That's 2015 for you.
No.
It's a new year. Things are going to be different. A lot more Z people walking around.
Aaron Fisk Radats with a Z at the end says, Dear C-Rate and Low Bar, sorry about the decidedly disparaging greeting pun. It's late and I've been drinking and playing Alien Isolation. Speaking of, what a game! While I've only come to it in the new year, I think it's fair to put it in the running for my favourite game of 2014. So much so that I'm already thinking about potential sequels. There was an interesting idea floated. Was it here on CNC or perhaps Rock Paper Shotgun? I'm too lazy to determine at this point. Anyway, the concept was that while the game clearly deserves a sequel, that perhaps the next entry shouldn't be an Alien game at all, and instead should use similar mechanics to portray an entirely different world of tense cat-and-mouse drama. And now that I've had the idea implanted in my mind, I just can't shake the thought of Die Hard Isolation. Oh yeah. What I wouldn't give to play as John McClane sneaking through Nakatomi Plaza, rendered in all of its cutting-edge 80s glory, complete with touchscreens, with a team of adaptive AI terrorists nipping at my heels. In the Alien Isolation style, I would improvise objects from the environment to distract and disable my foes, and gunplay would be sparse, tense, and often deadly for the player character. My question, what beloved film of times long past do you want to see translated with the same care as Alien, and why is it Groundhog Day? Sincerely, Aaron.
Andy McDowell Isolation.
Is Die Hard Isolation just not Alien Isolation with you as the alien?
Yeah, it is, I suppose, yeah.
Well, the
Which is rad, obviously.
bit where the alien gets a machine gun. Yeah.
Goes yippee-ki-yay.
Barefoot alien standing on glass.
Rad. I'd play that.
I think I'm so convinced we've had this conversation before, so someone correct me. Home Alone Isolation. Yeah. You're left alone at Christmas. Mm-hmm. You have to defend yourself.
I mean, the title just works immediately.
That was the Isolation.
Home Alone.
Yeah. Home Alone, Alona. Gone Home Alone. Isolation.
Home Alone, Die Alona.
Yeah.
That's a very sad and different.
Yeah.
It's a downer for sure. But
Oh God, why haven't I thought of that before? Why doesn't Gone Home have a mode where you get home, you discover all that stuff about your sister, and then some burglars arrive, and you
Gone
have to
Home
put
Alone.
paint cans on strings and stuff. That's a different game. But I totally
That's an
played.
expand alone.
Yeah, it's Gone Home, Expand Alone. Gone Home Alone, Expand Alone.
There it is.
Yeah.
That's money.
Yeah,
Quit.
we think.
That's money gainer, if you're listening.
Anyway,
he's off in space.
I'd go for Gone Home Alone.
I'd just go for Die Hard.
Yeah.
Isolation. I think I've spoken quite a lot on the podcast about my desires for a Die Hard game.
We should resurrect the board game that we were trying to make about Die Hard at some point.
Dice hard.
Dice Hard.
It was your
That's
name.
amazing.
I think credit where it's due. It was the best.
Good,
It was the best thing.
good granular wounding system.
Yeah.
But then you can only have one dice, I guess, because isn't dice the singular? Or is it the other way around?
Well, we wouldn't want to be...
Never
we
stopped
wouldn't
on the
want
claim, damn it.
to infringe the IP by going with only one die. So, yeah, it'd have to be dice.
Oh, dice is the plural.
Yeah.
Okay. I can never remember which round it is. Don't we also have a email that just says predator isolation?
We do, actually, yeah. I can't remember who says that.
Is that all they say? They just the word
Yeah.
predator, right?
Yeah.
I think they say, it makes sense or something like that.
Yes, that's James Hancock's who says that.
What does he say?
He says predator isolation. You know it's happening.
I'd rather have Blade Runner isolation over that.
Yeah, Blade Runner isolation would work, wouldn't it, I suppose? But I mean, you're kind of reducing that franchise to a single scene.
It would also be really annoying because
Also, it's not a franchise, sorry.
rather than those 10-second or 5-second death clips when you get caught by the alien, it would be like a 5-minute death clip. You get caught by Roy Batty.
Oh,
There's
God.
moments that last like tears in the rain.
Just let go of the fucking dove.
I think that was Ridley Scott's original direction.
That's probably Harrison Ford's direction.
I've seen gimbaled C-beam.
Procedurally generated monologues, final monologues would be an excellent.
That would be amazing, actually.
God, yeah. We could write that.
It just Mad Libs with that.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. They've got the animation system down. What we really need.
I've seen dishwashers on fire off the shore.
We could just write this. We could write
Yeah.
this.
Guys, got some terrible ideas for games. Free. Yeah.
Yes.
Michael writes in to say, "Hello, sealed crates filled with crowbars. I recently finished playing through the main mission of Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes, and I was really impressed. Not only did the game feel organic and alive in a way that I've never found,
I thought organic
Not only did I
alive.
feel organic and alive.
but it had a really interesting way of dealing with violence that I hadn't seen in video games before. Don't get me wrong, the game had several gruesome sections, including one particularly intense one near the end, but it never felt like the game was making you watch something gross. Or was being violent to draw in those who play COD for the blood and guts. To me, it all felt necessary, and neither overstated nor understated.
Marsh's incredulity is rising in this event.
My question to you is this. Have any of you played video games that use violence, blood, etc. in a way that you really liked, or that helped make a point effectively? Thanks, Future Mango. Sorry, I should have called you Future Mango, not Mike.
Coming back to those granular wounding systems, which not enough game have.
No, indeed.
I do like Dwarf Fortress for precisely that thing, though. The violence in that is grotesque, but it's all described via text, and so you don't mind so much getting, descriptions of wounds as your arms and dwarves and stuff like that get really badly injured. But the thing I wanted to say was that I really liked Soldier of Fortune 2's multiplayer.
I played the demo of that forever,
demo
basically.
was fucking brilliant.
I think I played the demo.
Yeah.
as well.
I think I ever played the multiplayer in the actual finished game. The single player for which was shite.
What was its wounding system called? It was called something like GNOME or something, but with it had like it was like an acronym. G.
Wasn't it GORE? Wasn't it?
Oh yeah, that's the one more obvious now.
Makes more sense to know.
For sure, you pointed it out.
GORE might have been.
What should we call that
game,
gore system?
actually.
No
I
more
don't think it
gore.
was Gore.
I think GORE was like a Serious Sam style, wacky, over-the-top first-person shooter. Actually, I take that back with a lot of blood splatter.
Gnaw?
Yeah, let's go with that.
It's also a series of cooking spices.
There's something satisfying about cause and effect of just, it's why physics systems are so satisfying when you can drop a grenade and things fall off the shelf. And there's something, I don't know how to describe it without sounding like a complete simpleton.
It's nice when stuff happens because you do things.
Yeah. And then you
are
feel
nice.
the satisfaction. Because I did that.
People's faces
That's how
fall
I
apart.
felt about people's faces falling apart.
I remember when you threw throwing knives at people, they would stick in them, and I think that was the first time I'd seen that. And that was deeply satisfying for me as an angry adolescent teenager.
And bullet holes would stay where you actually shot them without fading away for long periods of time. And the wounding system in the multiplayer was pared down from the single player. It didn't have as many degrees of mutilation.
Naturally, real humans can't be
Ghoul!
dismembered in that way.
Ghoul! It was called. See, it was kind of halfway between Gore and a gnome.
It's not the first time Marshall suddenly said, Ghoul! Ghoul!
I live here, and yeah, it's all the time.
I don't know what it's stood for.
I had this weird mental image of a gnome with no arms for this dismemberment system. You've got a tiny gun on it.
That's how you make a
gnome
ghoul.
system.
You just dismember a gnome.
The multiplayer mode for Soldier of
You
Fortune
gore
2
a gnome.
was it like capture the suitcase or something like that? It wasn't, you didn't both teams didn't have a suitcase, so it wasn't completely like CTF, but one team was trying to defend a suitcase and the other just had to get it and extract it. On a rooftop map. That was the map in the demo I remember. It was fucking great. Because of the bullet holes and the mutilation.
Isn't it weird that in our past there are so many games where we fucking love the demo and don't remember the full game at all? Or never bought
It's because we were poor children.
Yeah, we didn't have access, I guess.
And because freeware was more of a thing, you know, share.
Yeah, like, shareware was, give a third of your game away for free, basically. I remember Doom was the entire first chapter, like 12 levels or something,
And Quakes was the only good part of Quake.
Yeah. I was going to say, sorry. I was going to say, Dark Messiah Might Magic would be my pick of game with excellent violence.
Booting goblins.
And a brilliant fucking demo as well.
Brilliant fucking demo.
Yeah,
I think that's a great game, generally. Like, I mean,
more hours in that demo than the full game, I think.
yeah, I played it through a good couple of times.
Because there were a series of cheats you could use in the console to get access to things that weren't in the demo.
All the weapons.
Yeah, all the weapons. And so you could also spawn enemies. And I loved the combat system in that. But there wasn't enough opportunities to use it in the demo. So there's just like one square arena with like this kind of a pit, and there's a raised platform all around it and stairs coming up. And I would just spawn. When I cheated to get the other weapons, I found the staff was my favourite. So it's like, it's not a magic staff, you just bonk people with it. So you just twirl it around and then like smack them in the face and like prod them with it. And it's much more like you're just physically hitting them hard enough to hurt. And it's also really elaborate and fancy. And so I'd just spawn like 36 guards with swords and shields and just dive into them, like twirling around and kicking them off ledges and smacking them into the spikes. And it was just so much fun. Never had that fun with the full game. Like, the full game was good.
I don't understand why, since physics systems were introduced, every game doesn't just have an ice spell. Why can't I just create ice patches underneath people's feet? Because that was the greatest thing
People
ever.
falling over. It's
was
not
just
funnier
causing
than
them
that.
to slip around, try and keep their balance and then fall off a cliff. Again and again.
Great kicking. Great kicking, great decapitation. Like, just that horizontal swipe you could do after you kind of like kicked someone, they went reeling backwards, and you did that kind of like, brought both your arms up and just sort of crossed them.
Yeah.
That was back when like finishing moves weren't really a thing so much.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like,
Just
these days.
Well,
like
you had to pull it off. It wasn't like a button press. You had to kind of like do the right swipe at the right time.
It's just first-person games where you could see your own body. Wasn't that common back then?
Yeah,
It was
I remember-
like 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
I can't remember if this is the very start of the game, but at the start of a level, you start on the top floor of a building, and like an assassin is running up, and I can't remember if they kill someone or if you're trying to protect someone, but whatever. They run up the stairs, and you're next to a window, and you have the weapons to like defeat them, but if you just sidestep and wait for them to go near the window, then you can walk around them and kick them out of the window, and it doesn't kill them. They ragdoll out and they slam into the ground and they go up the stairs again. I just do that to a guy like 6 times until he just ran out of health and just lay limp on the stairs. It's like, you never learn, do you?
Alex Zook writes in to say, any chance the old episodes can end up back on iTunes? I'm probably missing some obvious cost to you, but I was going to listen to some of the early episodes and noticed they're not available through iTunes. Keep up the great podcasting.
I have no idea how that works.
They should be. Well, if they're not already online somewhere, then I can just put them on my website.
No, they're on the website.
Yeah, so we could just have like a page where we link them all, right?
We do. It's called the website. If you go back
Look on the website.
I guess this guy's got an Apple phone and wants them to automatically download to iTunes.
I don't really like this.
I don't
It's
understand
so
how
basically,
iTunes works.
iTunes pulls an RSS feed from the website and it uses that to populate which MP3s to pull out, and it still uses our hosting. And I think it maybe only pulls through like the 50 most recent or
Yeah,
something.
that's possible. In an RSS feed, you can specify you only ever give people.
So maybe it's a question of going in. If it's on our end, then I'll go in and expand.
Surely the RSS feed though is just like an XML file or whatever, and iTunes, if you scroll down, could then cooling the...
Yeah,
There's
you
no,
think so, but
there's no technological reason this can't be done. It's just...
If
I
you
choose
know
the
why
shit.
this isn't
This
working,
is the reason.
let us know.
yes, yeah, write in if you are.
I'll have a look at the feed settings and see if I can just press the button that says "Don't limit this."
And the last question from Casey Clark is: how much do you think spaghetti western structure affected video game quest structure? I noticed similarities, especially Fistful of Dollars through the good, bad, and the ugly.
Do they have a central hub where you take quests and go off and help farmers?
Pretty much.
Do you agree with the premise of the question?
No, well, no. I mean, I think there are definitely similarities between the spaghetti western and video games, but I think I think that mostly comes down to the idea of having a lone protagonist, and I think that's slightly coincidental because I think actually what video games draw from is the quest structure of actual myths about quests. Which is from medieval and Middle English literature.
See, I was thinking of it more as about resolution through violence. It's be like westerns are often thought of as, retellings of the American myth or whatever. That's what they are. It's
one of the-
colonizing that country through violence, and that tends to be what video games are. We go and colonize these spaces by shooting all the things in the face until they stop shooting.
Clearing the mini-map, or clearing the world map of things to do is actually a fairly good analogy. It's just,
And then you give them casinos.
I don't know if I wrote something about this specifically, about Red Dead Redemption for Edge, which I think is still available on their website, that is relevant because I agree in some ways, but I agree with Martin that a lot of what we say, a lot of video games get quests from medieval literature or from classical literature I agree that there's some particular, use of violence. I disagree stylistically, westerns come down to single shots quite a lot of the time. Video games almost never do. One of the great weaknesses of video games is they never do.
Yeah.
They're so bad at that beat, they don't do the one shot. It happens in a cutscene, it happens in a quick time event. No cowboy ever had a health bar in a film. But the other thing that I think is a crucial difference actually is that, westerns are about lone protagonists, but they're about lone protagonists in the one way that video games can't do. Because, the defining image of the Western is, the unknowable guy arrives, and people kind of watch him do rad shit, and then he leaves. Westerns are a simulation of what it would be like to be a bystander in a video game. But, very few Westerns put you directly inside the head of whoever the unknown gunman is.
That's why he's nameless.
That's
why Clint Eastwood never has a name.
Exactly. You always play the man with a name, right? In and
even if you don't,
He's usually
it's
called Cole.
yeah.
Chances are.
Cole Mason, gun guy.
John Mason. It's as soon as you put the player in charge of a character, even if they don't have a name, even if they are mysterious in the plot, they're going to be fucking jumping on tables and humping corpses and just going, "Woo, I'm an idiot," because that's what players do. And even if they don't, even if I just play them, I don't know. There's so few player vessels, avatars, who have a personality that they're able to impose on you as a player. As a player, you can always just override them, because being a player is the power fantasy, and you get to do whatever the fuck you want. So you can just, whoever this guy's meant to be, I can just override that and be a jerk about it. And in most ways that's good. But I really like, the way, Hitman deals with this, in that it might just be overreading into their intentions, but it always seems to me that Hitman is trying to make you alienated from the world by not the way it depicts the character, but the way it depicts the world. So everyone is kind of grotesque. Everyone is grotesquely exaggerated, over-sexualized and disgusting, and they just talk about sex all the fucking time. It's kind of different in each game. Blood Money is the one where it's obsessed with sex. Everyone's obsessed with sex. Everyone's over-sexualized. All the men are super muscly. All the women have massive tits. And it's your character has just no interest in it whatsoever. He's clearly, it seems to be asexual and just seems kind of disgusted by the whole thing, and it kind of does make you disgusted by the whole thing. It just seems so sordid, everyone's just sort of talking about it all the time. And Hitman 2, almost all the missions take place in foreign countries where all the people speak a language that you don't understand, and so you're alienated by people by just not knowing what the hell they're saying to you. And so you always feel when a guard is yelling at you in a foreign language, it's kind of really intimidating if you're scared of them, or just kind of alienating in general. You just feel this disconnect between you and other human beings, which is exactly what a sort of genetically engineered hitman would probably feel, who's a total sociopath who doesn't have any feelings for human beings anyway. And they kind of want you to behave like that. They're interested in the mechanics of, how you eliminate a target either with or without killing innocent people and that kind of stuff. But they're not super, they don't want you to really empathise with people. Like, the objective of the Hitman games is not to make you feel the emotions of all the people in the place. It's like, what would it be like to be a robotic, emotionless killer?
Sounds like games can do that.
Yeah, that's one of the things they can do.
That's why it was a terrible film.
Yes.
Well, one of many reasons. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting he picks the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I think that's one of the ones that doesn't, at least has that video game structure, since it's so much about the interplay between those three characters, and them chasing each other and backstabbing each other and forming alliances. It doesn't seem, like, I mean, there are a lot of westerns where the gunman, you know, comes to town and gets engaged in a bunch of fetch quests and, you know, and eventually saves the town. That feels kind of more video gamey, but I don't think the good and bad and the ugly does.
I suspect I've spoken about this on the podcast before. Maybe I haven't. There's a one western I think would make a good video game, which is Winchester 73, which is a Jimmy Stewart western, like an all black and white. One of his earliest westerns, I think. That is not about a single character or a single mysterious character. It's about a single mysterious gun. And so at the beginning of the game, Jimmy Stewart, who plays the Jimmy Stewart character, wins a rifle in a shooting competition and then immediately loses it to a bandit. And film doesn't follow any of those characters. It follows the gun as it passes from owner to owner to owner, and eventually back to Jimmy Stewart, who then uses it to kind of close the loop and kill the guy who stole the first.
That would be a really cool way to present a video game.
Yeah, and
that sounds great.
And like you play a gun in most games. You may as well.
That's me.
Like you might as well just play like a Winchester. Like, you just ride around like one bit, and that gun, and it's one of the, you know, we talked about how, you know, Game of Thrones, the game uses this really forced sort of narrative structure, this idea of a family that's everywhere, to kind of like have this theme park presentation of all the different aspects of that world. Like, that film uses that one gun to kind of move through all the different modes of the Western, kind of from like, you know, saloon thing to Native Americans to Civil War, like commenting on the Civil War and like the aftermath of the Civil War and stuff. And it's kind of, that's interesting. Like, I'd like to see a game take that approach where you just explicitly follow, you know, a camera strapped to a gun as it travels between a series of interesting environments.
This is only somewhat related, but JW from Blambeer, of like Super Crate Box and Nuclear Throne and Ridiculous Fishing fame, once, I don't know, is it like an interview or there's a website or something, there's some page where he talks about a bunch of the prototypes that he made that he never turned into full games. And one of them is called, I think, 3 Hours in the West. And it's based on Western films, and it's, I think might be maybe inspired by the 3:10 to Yuma. But it's about, basically, a train's going to arrive in 3 hours, and your target is on that train. And until then, there's nothing to do except just walk around the town and talk to the locals. And I think he said, like, what he wanted it to be was that the lead up to it would make the kill really meaningful. So when you do finally kill this guy, it wouldn't be an interesting challenge, but it would be like, because you got all this context, it would be a really meaningful kill. But in the end, he found that it was much more a case that the fact that you were going to kill someone in 3 hours made all of the talking really interesting. So you were much more interested in the actual, like, the stuff you were doing in that 3 hours.
I assume that's inspired by the opening sequence of Once Upon a Time in the West, which is
maybe
one of the top movies of all time.
I was going to say, I now really want someone to make an FPS, like, I don't know, like a futuristic campaign FPS, I don't know, Rebellion Against Evil Overlords, Half-Life 2 setup, whatever, where you explicitly play a floating camera drone that can carry a gun, and everyone in the game knows this is what you are. The opening sequence is you being invented. And like, you know, to win this fight, we need floaty camera drone gun robot. And you don't say anything, you're a silent protagonist, but you're a human being controlling it, and you'd probably actually, I think, like the characters more because they knew who you really were. Like, they would regard you, didn't have a love interest because they just regard you as if there's like an Alex.
Fucking drone with a gun.
Like, if there's an Alex style character, maybe she grows to respect the drone with a gun. But like,
it's sort of ridiculous it's not been a good RoboCop game, given that that is just about a robot with a human inside it, but who can only express himself through.
I mean, that's what
crimes.
That's what Jordan Thomas said about Bioshock 2, because he cast you as the Big Daddy. He said, well, we saw that the player essentially acts as a plexiglass, indestructible tank who charges through everything without caring about anything and gunning everything down. So we thought maybe a Big Daddy would be a good fit.
That'd be the most, like, that should be the next the Bioshock game where, like, you finally see a mirror and it turns around and you are one of those, like, floaty sentry drones. That's why you haven't seen your body this whole time.
So rather than the Big Daddy, you should be the flying helicopter machine gun drones.
All your dialogue shows are just whistling.
Yeah. Which is pretty true of the noise I make.
No more questions, that's it. for this podcast. Not for this year, though. There's many more podcasts this year.
That's it for the year. Close it down.
If you would like to send us a question, you can do so by emailing us at Creighton Crowbar. You can email us questions.
A Twitter handle rather than an email.
Did I say email? You can send us a tweet on the Twitter at Creighton Crowbar. I'm very sorry. You can send us an email at questions@CreightonCrowbar.com. You can leave a question on the forum at CreightonCrowbar.com/forum. Or you can email us individually.
Or Twitter us individually.
That's what I'm getting with that.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know that.
A clever meta joke.
Taking a joke out of my own mistake and in doing so making a second. If you'd like to tweet me, I am at CThurston, CTHURSTEN. Graham is...
At Gonnas, GONNAS.
Marsh is...
Marsh Davies, with an IES.
Tom is...
Pentact, PENTADACT.
And Tom is also...
PCG Ludo LUDO.
Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm just going to say it normally. Why do we never do that?
I do that sometimes, but it gets drowned out.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Hi. Why did I say hi?
Any other honks that anyone else?
Any other honks?
Burr, 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 burr.